Your home should support your life, not drain it. I'm Katie Trudeau, and this is the Whole Home Living Podcast. Here, we talk about simple, plant forward eating, realistic rhythms, and small systems that help your home work with you, not against you. No perfection, no pressure, just practical shifts that make everyday life feel lighter, calmer, and more nourishing. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the Whole Home Living Podcast. Today we're talking about that thing that makes everyone a little uncomfortable: calories. All right, let's be honest. The word calories probably brings up some stuff for you. Definitely does for me. Maybe it reminds you of that time you tried to eat 1,200 calories a day and were so hungry you wanted to fight someone. Or maybe it reminds you of the app you downloaded where you had to log every single bite and it made you feel guilty about eating an apple. Here's what I want you to hear today. Calories are not the enemy. I'm going to repeat that. Calories are not the enemy. Calorie counting is not inherently bad. But the way we've been taught to use it, now that's the disaster. Today, we're reframing the whole thing. We're talking about when tracking calories and macros can actually be helpful and when you're better off trusting your body and just eating real food. So the big question I get all the time as a health and nutrition coach is, do you actually need to count calories? This is the big question. And the short answer is probably not. Now, if you're eating mostly whole plant-based foods using frameworks like traffic light eating or the plate method, your body's natural hunger and fullness cues will do most of the work for you. Fiber regulates your appetite. So if you're eating a lot of fiber, you're going to feel full and just naturally stop eating. To top that off, whole foods, especially the plant-based fruits, veggies, these are naturally less calorie dense. You will get full before you overeat. Again, that's things like if you're eating a salad or some broccoli or some sliced carrots. I have a crinkle cut knife. Yes, I know it's special. You will get full eating those things before you overeat them. And this is what I tell people. For most people, eating a whole food, plant-based diet without processed food, without a lot of refined things, calorie counting isn't necessary. Your body knows how to regulate hunger and fullness when it's fueled with fiber-rich, nutrient-dense foods. That said, there are times when tracking can be useful. So maybe you're genuinely confused about why you're not losing weight, even though you think you're eating well. Maybe you're an athlete with specific performance goals. Maybe you're recovering from disordered eating and you need to make sure that you're eating enough. Or maybe you're eating more processed foods and you need some accountability. In those cases, tracking is not about control. It's about giving you the clarity into what you're eating. It's about gathering information so you can make better decisions. So that's the key difference. Tracking as a tool versus tracking as a punishment. One is empowering. It gives you data, and the other is exhausting. Now, caveat, there are medical conditions that can affect your weight. In those cases, you need to work with your primary care provider and do what's right for you based on their direction. Now, I do have a 4-step framework that is NASM aligned. So that's the National Academy of Sports Medicine. And if you do decide to track, they have a science-backed framework to understand your calorie and your macro needs. Again, this is all based on NASM guidelines, National Academy of Sports Medicine. So step 1, you calculate your basal metabolic rate. I'm going to tell you what that means. That is just the number of calories your body burns at rest to keep you alive. This is how much energy your body needs to keep your heart beating, to keep your lungs breathing, to keep your cells functioning. Okay, that's why we need calories. Calories are not the problem. Calories are energy. And your body needs some energy to keep you alive. That's a very important thing. All right. Now we're going to get sciencey and we're going to get mathy for a minute. I will be the first to admit I don't love math, but we use a little formula to figure out what your basal metabolic rate is. The formula is called the Mifflin-St. Jeor equation. It factors in your age, your weight, your height, and your biological sex. Now, I'm going to read this, but out loud. So you're obviously listening to me. But if you want to see the formula or copy it, it will be in the show notes. Now, for men, your BMR is, you're going to have to do a couple pieces. You're going to have to figure out your weight in kilograms, multiply that by 10. And then you're going to add that to another formula, which is your height in centimeters times 6.25 minus another formula, 5 times your age, all of that plus 5. All right, that's a lot. I'm sure no one followed along and figured that out in their head. If you did, that's awesome. More power to you. My brain does not do math in my head like that. I need a pencil, a calculator. Anyway, just get the formula. It's in the show notes. For women, it is a very similar formula, except at the end, instead of doing plus 5, you're going to minus 161. All right, so once you have that number, again, it's in the show notes, you're going to adjust for your activity level. So remember, your BMR is your baseline. That's what keeps you alive. But if you are really active, you're going to need more energy. So there is an activity factor. So you take your baseline and you are going to multiply it by an activity factor to estimate your total daily energy expenditure. And that accounts for your job. So if you're active at work, if you're exercising, movement, maybe you're walking at the zoo with your kids. So your total daily energy expenditure includes everything to keep you alive, plus your movement. If you're sedentary, your activity factor is multiplied by 1.2. If you're lightly active, 1.375. If you're moderately active, 1.55. And if you're very active, it's 1.725. Extremely active, 1.9. Be realistic with which number you choose, just so you have the most accurate number. Again, this is also in the show notes. All right, step 3. All right, so we have our baseline, we've factored in our activity, and now this is where we really start to factor in your goals. If you want to lose fat, you'll subtract anywhere from 250 to 500 calories from your total daily expenditure. If you want to maintain your weight, you eat at your total daily expenditure. And if you want to build muscle, you're going to add 250 to 500 calories. Now, these are small adjustments. Notice that we're not slashing our calories in half. These are sustainable changes that your body can handle without freaking out. Again, this is also why you have to be really realistic when you're factoring your activity level. All right, next up is step 4, breaking it into macros. And so now you have your daily allotment of calories and you divide them across your 3 macros: carbs, protein, and fat. For NASM, the recommended ranges are carbs, 45 to 65% of your total calories, protein, between 10 and 35% of your total calories, and fat is between 20 and 35 of your total calories. Now, I won't go into all of these. I have a whole separate podcast episode on macros. Bottom line is you need all of them. And these are ranges. These are not rules. You adjust based on your activity level, your goals, and what makes you feel good. For example, an athlete might need more carbs. I'm talking to my runners out there. I am in that group. I need more carbs, especially if I'm going to refuel mid-run. Someone focused on feeling full, they might eat a little more protein. Someone eating plant-based might land on the higher end of carbs and the moderate end of protein. And that's great because there is flexibility here. Now, again, I've said it I'm going to say it again. This seems like a lot of math, and it absolutely is. I do have a free tool to do this math for you. On my website, I have a calorie and macro calculator. So you plug in your age, your weight, your height, your activity level, and your goal, and it will spit out your BMR, your calorie range, and your suggested macro breakdown in about 10 seconds. There's no subscription, no email required. It's just free, clear, fast information. And you can get it to get a baseline understanding of where you're at and then decide whether you want to track or maybe you just track occasionally as a quick gut check. So I want to walk you through a few real life examples and so you can see how this plays out. I have a couple of case studies in my book. I'm going to talk about them here as well. So case study 1 is Danielle. And her story is about maintenance and moderate activity. So Danielle is 28, weighs 143 pounds, is 5'5", and she exercises about 3 to 5 days a week. And her goal is just to maintain. So factoring all of this in, her basal metabolic rate is about 1,380 calories. That's what her body burns just by existing. So we factor in her moderate activity, and her total daily expenditure jumps to 2,139 calories, and that's maintenance. So we break that into 50% carbs, 25% protein, 25% fat. At the end of her day, she'll log 267 grams of carbs, 134 grams of protein, and 59 grams of fat. And that, for her, will maintain. Now we're going to take a look at a fat loss case study with Mike. Mike is 35, weighs 187, is 5'11", and he's exercising about 1 day a week. His goal is fat loss. So his basal metabolic rate is 1,805 calories. We're going to multiply his factor by the light activity because he's only going to the gym once. So we're going to be realistic and we're going to multiply that by the activity factor for light activity. That leads him with his total daily expenditure is 2,482 calories. Now he's in fat loss mode, so we subtract 500 and his total is 1,982 calories per day. Do you notice how this feels so much better? 1,900 is doable. You know, I've seen people go on these crazy low calorie diets where it's like 1,200 calories. That's not enough. That is going to stress your body out. So when you take the time to do a little math, you're not guessing at what you need to lose weight. You're not guessing at what your body needs. The formulas exist for a reason. All right, last, final case study is Emily. She's very active and she wants to gain muscle. She's 22, weighs 121 pounds. She's 5'3", and she's hitting the gym about 6 days a week with her friends. And her goal is muscle gain. So her BMR is 1,279. So now, I just said Mike wouldn't make sense eating 1,200 calories. Emily's BMR is 1,200. But we factor in her activity level. She's very active, so we're giving her that activity factor of 1.725. That cranks her total daily expenditure to 2,205 calories. And then to gain muscle, we're going to add 300 calories. So Emily needs 2,505 calories per day to reach her goals. Now, that's what it looks like on paper. Here's the thing, though. None of these people have to track everything every single day to benefit from knowing this. They can use this information to reality check their portions, make sure they're in the ballpark, and they can eat intuitively informed by data rather than controlled by the data. So, for example, if Emily knows that she needs 100 calories per day, she measures it out a couple days. She knows what that looks like. The next day, she doesn't have to remeasure. If she's like recreating the same meals, she already knows like, this is what I need today to reach all my goals. And that's really powerful. So here's my philosophy. I want to bring it all together. The calculator, just this whole math formula, it gives you awareness. Whole foods do the work. If you know your calorie range and you're eating mostly green and yellow foods, you're going to land pretty close to your targets without obsessing over them. Now, if you just heard me say green and yellow foods, what is that? Head over to the previous podcast episode where I explain all about traffic light eating. What is a green light food? What is a yellow light food? The bottom line is whole foods are self-regulating. You get full, you stop eating. That's elegant. Tracking every gram of food forever is not sustainable for most people, but having a general sense of what your body needs, that's powerful. Thanks for listening. If today's episode was helpful, take a moment to share it with someone who could use a little more ease around food and home. You can also leave a review. It helps more families find whole home living. For simple resources, practical tools, and upcoming workshops, visit wholehomeliving365.com. And remember, eating well doesn't require perfection. It just needs a system that works with your life. I'm Katie Trudeau. See you next time.